I step into the office, my chest tight, heart hammering against my ribs like it's trying to escape. The air feels thick, charged, every glance from the team slicing sharper than any words. I sense tension before a single syllable is spoken, an invisible weight pressing down on me, on Grace. There she sits, my Aunty Grace, perfectly composed on the outside, yet I catch it, the tiniest quiver in her hands as she flips through the papers with surgical precision. Every page she turns is a calculated motion, yet the tremor betrays her calm. My stomach knots as the junior associates whisper amongst themselves, glancing my way with smirks that sting. They treat me like part of some joke, an accessory to their impatience. "We need her decision now," one of them says, voice sharp and dismissive, as if Grace's experience, her authority, were meaningless. I watch, stomach twisting, as they underestimate her completely. Brandon, the client, leans back in his chair, smug grin plastered across his face. He thinks he can push her, bend her, make her yield. I feel it then, a sharp, humiliating pang, as though their impatience is personal, aimed not just at her, but at me, at everything we stand for. The secretary fumbles, dropping a stack of files. Laughter erupts, loud and careless. But Grace doesn't flinch. She freezes, eyes narrowing, and the room falls into silence under her stare. Every giggle and whisper is cut in half, suspended in tension, as if time itself respects her authority. I catch the tiniest shift between her and Brandon, a small, almost imperceptible smirk, and in that instant, I know the storm is already gathering. My anger spikes, raw and unfiltered. They aren't just rushing her, they're trying to humiliate her, and by extension, humiliate me. Then her voice cuts through, calm, icy, deliberate. "I'll need more time than you expect." The words hang in the room, a cold blade slicing through arrogance. The disbelief is palpable. You could see it painted across Brandon's face. The air shifts, tense and electric, as whispers of annoyance transform into visible panic. I notice it. The slightest falter in Brandon's condescending tone, a crack in his confidence that grows as seconds tick by. Each tick of the clock feels like a scoreboard, marking his failure, his impotence against Grace's controlled patience. And I feel it. The first sparks of satisfaction, hidden and sweet. Grace is already plotting her slow-burning retribution, letting them sweat, letting their arrogance unravel, one tick at a time. The storm is quiet now, almost imperceptible, but I know it's coming, and I will witness it in full. Memories hit me like a lightning strike, sudden and vivid. Grace guiding me through life, her voice steady, firm, teaching me patience when I wanted to rush, resilience when the world pressed too hard, and quiet power that made people bend without them realizing it. I can almost feel her hand on my shoulder, the warmth of her presence, the authority she carried even when the world tried to ignore her. I remember the humiliation years ago, the rival company laughing at her, mocking her competence like she was nothing more than a paperweight. I can see the sneers, the whispers behind her back, and the sting of it all, the wound never fully healed. She carried it silently, storing it, and now I understand why. There was the time she sacrificed a promotion to protect someone she cared about, a quiet heroism that earned respect from a select few and resentment from the rest. I'd watched her make choices like that, never seeking applause, yet every slight and setback etched itself into her resolve. Late nights in her study come back to me, the dim light casting long shadows as she told me, "People rush others because they fear losing control." Her eyes, serious and piercing, drilled the lesson into me. At the time, I thought I understood, but now I feel the weight of those words deep in my chest. She had shared her first major negotiation with me once, a story of humiliation that became a triumph. Every calculated pause, every measured word had turned ridicule into a lesson for her opponents. I remember thinking it sounded like a story, but now I see it as a blueprint she has been following all along. I cringe at my own naivety, how I used to rush decisions, how I used to think speed was strength. I wish I had learned sooner. And Brandon? Her warnings about him replay endlessly in my mind, subtle hints she had dropped, now crystal clear. His arrogance, his impatience. She saw it all before I did. I remember her phone call with her mentor years ago, the words ringing again in my mind. Never let them think they can hurry you. I feel the deep, hidden trauma that fuels her, the kind of quiet fire that turns every insult into a weapon, every slight into ammunition for the day it counts. Guilt twists inside me. I had doubted her in small things, brushed off her instincts, and now I realize that every small lesson I ignored was shaping this moment, teaching me how to watch her operate. Our bond feels unbreakable. She is no longer just my aunt in my mind. She is a force I can lean on, a strategy incarnate, a storm contained in human form. Her eyes betray decades of betrayal, every calculated pause, every measured movement carrying the weight of battles fought silently. I feel my pulse quicken, a mixture of fear, anticipation, and awe. This slow, deliberate wait is her signature move. The mark of someone who knows patience is the prelude to devastation. For the first time, I understand fully, patience is not weakness. It is the prelude to a crushing reveal, the calm before the storm that leaves no doubt who holds the power. Every memory sharpens my anticipation. Every recollection fuels the tension coiling in my chest. I know that the confrontation to come will not just be a battle, it will be a symphony of justice, orchestrated perfectly by grace, and I am ready to witness every devastating note. Brandon's impatience finally snapped. Papers flew from his hands with sharp, aggressive flicks, the sound slicing through the room like a whip. His arrogance, once polished and unshakable, now trembled at the edges with frustration. Each word clipped, each gesture forced. I caught it then. The tiniest flicker of enjoyment in Grace's eyes. She didn't rush, didn't react. She let him stew, let him sweat. And in that stillness, I felt a surge of pride mixed with anticipation. Whispers began to ripple through the office, subtle at first, then louder, questioning our competence, questioning our timing. I could feel the weight of judgment pressing in, the tension thick, almost suffocating, yet somehow perfectly timed. Every glance, every cough amplified the humiliation Brandon was trying to impose, but it was like fuel for Grace. She went over the documents again, slower this time, meticulous, deliberate. Every pause was a dagger, invisible but sharp, each tick of the clock amplifying Brandon's growing panic. He tried a veiled threat about deadlines, a sharp edge to intimidate, but Grace's gaze never wavered. She refused to bend. I saw him falter, the mask of his polished arrogance cracking. My chest tightened with excitement as I silently cheered her restraint. Emails pinged nonstop, phones buzzed, and pressure mounted from all directions. But her slow, deliberate pace dismantled every tactic, leaving him exposed, frustrated, and powerless. I remembered her stories, the lessons she'd shared about fast-talking executives, about letting impatience betray itself. Each encounter had been a rehearsal, each humiliation a lesson in controlled retaliation. The client's assistant knocked over a cup of coffee in a sudden chaos, brown liquid creeping across papers and the floor. The room held its breath, expecting a reaction, but Grace didn't flinch, not even a twitch. Her composure was absolute, an invisible shield against every attempt to destabilize her. I could see it then. Brandon's embarrassment was growing, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. The whispers circled, murmurs of doubt seeping into the room, undermining him without her ever speaking a word. A wave of dread and anticipation surged through me. Everyone felt it. The slow burn strategy was no longer invisible. It hung in the air, taut as a wire, waiting to snap. Grace finally spoke, calm and precise, asking questions that cut deeper than any accusation could. Each one exposed gaps, lack of preparation, cracks in Brandon's carefully constructed facade. She never raised her voice. There was no overt aggression, just methodical, surgical dismantling of his arrogance. Each question landed like a hammer strike, subtle but devastating. I felt the tension peak as his confidence faltered, a tremor in his expression signaling the first taste of reversal. And then she went silent. Strategic silence. Every tick of the clock became her weapon, every pause a threat unspoken. The stakes multiplied with each second, and the room's energy shifted entirely. Brandon realized, too late, that he had underestimated her, and the storm she commanded was only beginning. My phone buzzed sharply in my pocket. A discreet message from an insider lit up the screen. Brandon's shortcuts, unethical maneuvers, everything he had tried to hide. My fingers moved almost instinctively, forwarding the intel to Grace without a sound. She paused mid-page, eyes narrowing just slightly, a signal so subtle I almost missed it, but I felt it deep in my chest. The tide was shifting. Something in the room changed, a current under the fluorescent lights, electric and undeniable. A long phone call crackled across the room moments later. A higher authority confirmed what we had suspected all along. Our leverage over Brandon's rushed timeline was absolute. I watched him shift uneasily, realizing too late that his control had been an illusion. Every gesture, every smug glance he had relied on now betrayed panic. Grace's lips curved into a subtle smirk, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. She had absorbed the revelation and now wielded it like a weapon. Around us, whispered conversations flitted through the office, confirmation of minor regulations he had broken, each disclosure stacking toward an irreversible exposure. My heart hammered as I watched her, calm and composed, while the storm of precise retribution swirled beneath her surface. Every measured blink, every tilt of her head spoke of patience turned lethal. The office watched in silence, tension crackling like electricity, every employee sensing the shift in power, the subtle reversal no one dared challenge. Grace leaned forward finally, her voice soft yet commanding, each word striking with surgical precision. I believe we need to reconsider your timeline entirely. Brandon's face drained of color. The realization hit him like a punch. He had miscalculated. The power dynamic had not just shifted, it had inverted entirely. I felt it then. This moment was more than revenge. It was a masterclass in patience, poise, and justice. The room collectively exhaled, the whispers of anticipation transforming into murmurs of awe at her control, at the unshakable force she had become. Grace set her terms, deliberate and exacting, designed to ensure accountability and public exposure. Each clause, each stipulation was a blow masked in civility. I felt a surge of pride that was almost physical, witnessing years of wisdom, years of hidden battles, crush arrogance with surgical precision. Every micro-expression on Brandon's face was etched into my mind, the twitch of his jaw, the widening of his eyes, the hesitation in his stance. Proof. Proof that slow, deliberate patience, the art of letting the storm gather before striking, always prevails. The boardroom was tense, every eye fixed on Grace as she began her presentation. With meticulous care, she laid out the evidence of Brandon's shortcuts, each slide, each document, every detail sharpened like a scalpel. The air felt electric, heavy with anticipation, as I watched my aunt orchestrate the room with quiet authority. Murmurs rippled through the colleagues around me, astonishment etched on their faces. None had expected the thoroughness of her preparation, the depth of her foresight. Brandon shifted in his seat, his confident posture faltering as each piece of evidence landed with precision. He stumbled over excuses, words tripping over each other in desperation, but Grace dismantled them calmly, publicly, her tone measured, her gaze unwavering. Each rebuttal cut him down without need for theatrics, exposing arrogance and impatience for all to see. A surge of vindication coursed through me as the CEO's assistant, visibly nervous, corroborated our findings, confirming what Grace had outlined. Every nod, every hesitant affirmation strengthened the foundation of his unraveling. Grace moved methodically, exposing minor violations one by one in front of everyone. Each revelation struck like a hammer blow, subtle yet devastating, reverberating through the room. I tracked every faltering word of Brandon, savoring the humiliation that had been building for weeks, feeling it sink into him like the cold weight of justice. A senior partner finally spoke, commending Grace publicly. I felt a rush of satisfaction seeing her recognition, long overdue, finally acknowledged in a room that had doubted her competence. Legal notices were served, documents exchanged with silent efficiency. The spectacle was complete yet controlled. No drama, no theatrics, only the precision of strategy. I watched Brandon shrink, both metaphorically and literally. Under the scrutiny of his peers, his stature diminished as his failures were laid bare. Grace leaned in for her final words, calm yet cutting, and I felt the power shift permanently sealed. The office erupted in quiet applause, reverence, and awe directed at her mastery, while Brandon absorbed the full weight of his miscalculation. The thrill of delayed satisfaction surged through me, the understanding of letting the storm brew before striking settling deep in my chest. Every colleague now regarded Grace with respect, admiration, and even fear, while Brandon's aura had cracked irreparably. I realized in that charged silence that the revenge had never been just personal. It was a demonstration of integrity, patience, and the quiet art of timing. Grace's slow, deliberate process was never indecision. It was the blueprint for a perfect, unavoidable unraveling, and I had witnessed it in full, breathtaking detail. Brandon slipped out of the office quietly, shoulders slumped, the defeat in his gait impossible to ignore. The room, once tense with expectation, now seemed to breathe in the aftermath of his failure. Grace remained at the center, calm and composed, a quiet force that dominated every glance, every whispered conversation. I watched as colleagues approached her one by one, offering congratulations, respect, admiration, everything she had earned over years of overlooked brilliance. I felt a deep internal release, the tension that had coiled in my chest for weeks finally unraveling. Emails began to trickle in, apologies from those who had doubted her, acknowledgments of her skill and foresight. Each message felt like a small victory, validation of the patience and strategy she had executed so flawlessly. Grace allowed herself a subtle smile, restrained and controlled. She refused to gloat, letting the results speak louder than words, the silent power of her success echoing across the office. I reflected on the lessons etched into every moment, the art of patience, the strength of measured responses, the justice that comes from timing rather than force. I noted subtle shifts in the office dynamics. Her authority was now untouchable, while Brandon's influence had evaporated completely, leaving him a shadow of the man who had entered. Our bond, already strong, deepened in that moment. I understood why she had always emphasized the virtue of measured action, the strength of waiting, watching, and letting the storm form before striking. The whispers of humiliation that had haunted us, the lingering sense of insult and doubt, now felt like distant echoes, replaced by a triumphant quiet. I took a slow, steadying breath, savoring the poetic justice delivered without cruelty, without theatrics, only precision and inevitability. Every delayed email, every calculated pause, every subtle hesitation that had seemed like indecision now felt vindicated in retrospect. The weight of past injustices lifted, the emotional ledger balanced at last. A sense of inspiration settled over me. I realized that slow, deliberate action could rewrite outcomes, enforce justice, and preserve dignity simultaneously. Grace finally exhaled, a rare sigh slipping past her composed exterior, the storm she had controlled now safely dispersed. And in that moment, I understood fully. This was more than victory. It was a blueprint for navigating manipulation, for reclaiming power with grace, and for teaching lessons that words alone could never convey. Oh, I lean into the camera, my voice low, intimate, as if sharing a secret with every viewer. I recount every subtle shift of power we witnessed, the pauses, the glances, the unspoken tension that built until the storm finally broke. I describe the slow burn of patience, the deliberate waiting that turned arrogance into vulnerability. I emphasize how rushing, how forcing someone's hand only amplifies their misjudgment, setting them up for a fall they never see coming. I reflect on Grace's hidden strength, decades of unseen preparation, every lesson she had stored, finally revealed in one flawless, masterful execution. I share a sensory memory, the click of the clock echoing in the silent office, the tense, almost electric air, Brandon's faltering tone, his confidence unraveling before our eyes. I draw lessons about emotional resilience, the quiet power of the underestimated. Never underestimate someone who has learned to wait, to observe, to strike only when the moment is perfect. I emphasize that revenge isn't born of anger. It is strategic, precise, delivered with composure, with patience, and with justice that leaves no room for doubt. I tease the subtle details viewers might have missed, the micro expressions, the slightest shift in Grace's gaze, the silent control she wielded. I invite them to rewatch, to notice the small, decisive moments that defined the outcome. I suggest that patience and timing are tools everyone can wield, lessons in power that extend beyond the boardroom, applicable to victories in life, in relationships, in moments where patience can rewrite the outcome. I close with a reflective, emotional punch. Sometimes the slowest path delivers the hardest lessons to those who rush. I urge viewers to subscribe for more cinematic revenge stories, to witness strategies that turn the underestimated into unstoppable forces. I invite them to comment on moments where patience turned the tide in their own lives, sharing victories built on quiet strength. I leave a lingering tension in the outro, hinting at future stories where underestimated figures reclaim control, where patience and precision overturn arrogance. I fade out with a final reflection on dignity, on power, on the quiet art of waiting. The screen lingers on Grace's calm, triumphant face, a visual lesson in patience, in justice, in mastery. I end with a soft whisper, almost for her ears alone. Never let anyone rush your decisions. Let them wait for the storm.